There are very few people in the modern world who become religious, who come to believe in God because it provides the best cosmology, or because it provides the best physics or biology or psychology or anything like that. And that includes Dr. Craig. There's a famous quote by him that says that the real reason, the primary reason for believing in Christianity isn't cosmological arguments. And I'm not mentioning this as a criticism. It is simply an observation of fact. There are other reasons to be a theist other than cosmology. And I think that is true. I think that makes sense. Most people who become religious do so for other reasons, because it gives them a sense of community, a sense of connection with the transcendent. It provides meaning or fellowship in their lives. The problem is that the basis of religion in the modern Western world is theism, belief in the existence of God. And I've tried to make the case that science undermines theism pretty devastatingly. 500 years ago, it would have made perfect sense to be a theist. I would have been a theist 500 years ago. By 200 years ago, science had progressed to the point where it was no longer the best theory. By 100 years ago, after Darwin, it was a rout. And by these days, with modern cosmology, there's no longer any reason to take that as your fundamental worldview. So what do you do if you identify as a member of a religious tradition in this situation? I think there are three options. One is to deny the science, to think that the world is 6,000 years old. Happily, nobody up here on stage today takes that attitude. That was a previous debate from a couple weeks ago. But there's a second attitude, which is to accept the science but deny the implications. To say that none of the progress of modern science has in any way altered the fundamental view of reality that we put together 2,000 years ago. And I think that there's two reasons why that's not a good idea. Number one, I think it's wrong, as I tried to explain throughout the debate. But number two, I think it's a strategic mistake. I think that if one believes in theism, that must be central to one's view of the world for many, many other reasons. And because theism has been undermined by science, it takes theists and it marginalizes them as part of the wider intellectual conversation. Humanity is at a crossroads. It's a very important time in the history of the world. We need to have deep discussions about who we are and where we're going, and people who cling to the belief in God after science has undermined it are increasingly not going to be part of that discussion. We talked about cosmologists and physicists. Here's what philosophers believe. There's a recent survey that asked philosophers 30 big questions. And, philosophers don't agree on anything, but here are the three questions they had the greatest amount of consensus on. External reality exists, science tells us something about that external reality, and God does not exist. Now again, philosophers, you get three philosophers in a room, they don't even agree that there are three philosophers in the room. So the fact that there's only 73% is still very impressive, and this includes professional philosophers of religion. So I claim that there is a third option, and here's the point where I start giving people advice who did not ask me for any advice. So I ask your indulgence here. The third option, as I see it, for the person who is religious is to say, look, we admit we were wrong. We were wrong hundreds of years ago when we based our belief system on the idea that God was in charge of it all. Of course we were wrong. It was 2,000 years ago. We didn't have microscopes or telescopes. What right do we have to think that we would have gotten the fundamental nature of reality right? But, this person could hypothetically say, religion is much more than theism. It's not just the belief in God. There is the fellowship we feel for our human beings. For centuries, religious traditions were the place where human beings did their most careful, sustained, and rigorous contemplation about what it means to be human, about what it means to experience joy or suffering, to feel camaraderie with your fellow man, to be charitable, and so forth, to have meaning and purpose in your lives. So maybe, this person could say, there's something to be learned even for naturalists from the outcome of all that contemplation. Maybe there is wisdom in scriptures, in the Sermon on the Mount, in the art and the music and the lives of the saints, or for that matter, in the Bhagavad Gita or the Tao Te Ching. I don't know whether there is wisdom there. I'm asking for guidance. At the end of the day, we are all human beings trying to figure out our way in this confusing world. The point is that naturalism replaces theism, but it doesn't replace religion. It doesn't necessarily provide answers to the hard questions of meaning and fulfillment and purpose. I think that it can. I find naturalism personally to be an inspirational and profound view of the world. Ironically, the part I find most inspirational is the fact that someday I will die. Everyone in this room will someday be dead, and there will not be an afterlife, a continuance of judgment. The lives we lead now are not dress rehearsals. They are the only performance we have. Therefore, what matters is what is here, the people we know and love, the lives we can change, the good we can do for the world. That is all there is, so of course, that is what matters. Another way of putting it is, naturalism has addressed the easy questions, the basic physical features of how the world works. But there are hard questions of meaning and purpose and fulfillment yet to be answered. The way I like to say is, we have picked the low-hanging fruit off of the tree of knowledge. But there's a lot of succulent goodies up there on the higher branches. And we'll get there faster if we all climb together. Thank you.